Welcome to Code the Future, where we sit down with the leaders, innovators, and big thinkers who are paving the way for our software-defined future. Today, we're sitting down with a partner of ours. Jason Waldman is the Associate Director of Business Development at Advantech. Jason, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Matt. My pleasure.
Excellent. So you guys, much like QNX, you play in a lot of different industries, everything from agricultural technology to aerospace and defense and medical devices and surgical robotics applications, industrial automation. The list goes on, right? But for this conversation, I want to sort of focus it on that med tech space. So maybe you can provide us with a little bit of an overview in terms of the front lines of that industry and what Advantech's role is within the ecosystem.
Yeah, absolutely. So, medical technology is constantly evolving. We've gone from, your typical surgeon having a scalpel and, long incisions, things like that, to incisions literally the size of maybe a dime.
Wow.
A lot of it's now being done with robotics. So where we come into it is we work with the top med device manufacturers in the world. I think we have like 29 of the top 30 as customers. And we essentially help to provide their compute solutions for their own devices. So we like to say we're the brand behind the brand because in a lot of cases, you might see somebody else's name on the box, but it's really our hardware from a compute standpoint that is powering those
Gotcha.
applications.
An ingredient brand, much like QNX, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So, I mean, you're involved in a lot of different conversations with customers and partners and folks from across the industry. Are there any sort of common themes or trends that you sort of see emerging as when you're a fly on the wall of those discussions? Or
I think the common theme that you typically see, obviously safety is extremely important with medical devices.
yeah,
You want to make sure that they're reliable, that they're not going to go down mid-procedure, because
of course.
for surgery, that would be a very bad thing. But the other things that are really kind of the keys for the medical device industry is things like longevity.
Okay.
With
Yeah.
certification aspect being a big component, particularly with the FDA in North America or in the United States, we often hear from customers that they want to have products be available to them for as long as possible. So it's
Mhm.
usually about a minimum of 7 years. A lot of them want 10 to 15. Some of them even ask for 20. But
Wow.
we typically are able to provide that level for them. And then the second component to this too is just, being able to have that reliability. Like I said, I think that
Yeah.
that's really the biggest thing for them. Just to be able to provide something that they can rely on over and over and over
Yeah.
again.
Okay. So you mentioned, I mean, the longevity of having, devices that are reliable in the field and whatnot. When you think about sort of other emerging technologies, and the differences that they can make in patient care over the next decade, what else comes to mind?
Well, I think the biggest thing really is AI, the big buzzword
Sure.
now,
Of
it
course.
becoming a huge component
Yeah.
with procedures, with surgeries. It's to the point now where you literally can provide real-time analytics mid-procedure. So just as an example, we showcased this at a couple shows previously, but with AI-assisted surgery, it literally, as the surgeon is, making incisions or as they're doing work on a patient, can tell the surgeon, hey, you're looking at this body part. You're looking at, this particular type of injury to the tissue. This is the tool that's being seen on screen. And it's providing all of that real time. Same thing with medical imaging, in which, as a tech is doing a scan of somebody, they can say, oh, this looks like, this particular type of tumor or carcinoma or something.
Okay.
What that enables is it enables much faster diagnosis.
Right.
Things can happen either in real time or very shortly thereafter. It also just provides kind of a checkpoint for the surgeon or for the doctor when they're, reviewing the data, or they're
Mhm.
watching the procedure going
Yeah.
on in real time of, hey, yeah, this is kind of what I'm looking at. It's not in place of a doctor. Like, we're not to the point, and I hope we
Sure.
never get there,
Yeah, of course.
because I come from a medical family where we end up replacing doctors with AI, but we're to the point now where it just provides that extra little bit of an extra layer of trust,
Yeah.
and an extra layer of kind of checks and balances about what
Okay.
they're looking at.
Yeah, I mean, it's really quite revolutionary when you think about, some of those use cases you're talking about. You can really see, wow, seconds count, right? Seconds matter, and particularly when it comes to diagnosis or surgeries, that can make the difference, right? So,
Yeah, and the big thing, especially with these procedures now, is we're seeing a transition actually from cloud back to edge. And the reason for that is, there's a latency obviously when you go to cloud. And I mean, it's milliseconds, but it can be noticeable. So it's absolutely critical that the device is on-prem, usually in the OR, usually in the procedure room with
Mm.
the provider to make sure that they are getting that real time feedback as quickly as possible. So I think that's really become the other big thing is ORs now are really turning into almost more like a computer lab
Mhm.
to some degree, and there is a lot of different equipment now in there. If you start looking around, I mean, it looks like something out of a sci-fi movie at
Wow.
times, but
Yeah, that's very
it's
cool.
pretty it's pretty interesting now to see what it's become.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. That's great. So, I mean, obviously, that's once the devices are in the operating room, in the operating theater or whatnot, but there's a long process to get to that point. So maybe you can talk a little bit about what are the biggest challenges that you see, manufacturers when they're trying to bring a device to market, get
Yeah.
it approved by the FDA.
Yeah, it's definitely a long process. So typically, just the process for us, the selling cycle for us is anywhere between 9 and 12 months. And within that time period, what typically happens is we have a team that actually will go through and they will assist the customer in speccing out their system. We'll ask questions about what's the application, what I/O ports do you need, how much compute power do you need, assemble the right components, get the right partners like QNX involved in the conversation to make sure that we're providing a complete solution for the customer. And then it just comes down to we put it together, we start, we produce evaluation samples, we have the customer test everything out, make sure everything works properly. And then that's honestly then when the real work begins, because from that point, especially if it's a newer device, they have to go through an FDA testing process and certification process, which is extremely rigorous. Now we are very familiar with it. Obviously, we have experts in house.
Yep.
Our last mile integration facility in Milpitas, California, is FDA registered, so we can do
Okay.
the work afterwards. But it takes a lot of time, resources, and dollars to be able to bring a product to market
Yeah.
within the U.S. market in
Yeah.
particular.
Yeah, I mean, you can understand why it's such a long, expensive process, when you're dealing with people's lives, right? You gotta make sure that everything is absolutely ironclad, right? Nothing can go wrong or whatnot, right? So what does that next phase look like then once the device is certified? Talk about, I guess, the surgeons training on dummies or before they actually using it with a real patient. What does that normally look like?
Yeah, for sure. They actually will bring in. So we deal with a number of robotic surgery companies, and they obviously produce the actual robot, but in a lot of cases, they're producing the training module,
Hmm.
in which a surgeon's able to sit down and do a test run. I've seen demos of it previously where they'll have you do things like use the tools to remove rubber bands to kind of simulate or put rubber bands on things to simulate,
Yeah.
essentially stretching it out. It kind of reminded me of the game Operation, actually.
Yeah, that makes
But,
good
it's amazing kinda to see. They will do some pretty extensive training, to make sure that they're 100% comfortable and ready
Mhm.
to use it. Because obviously once you use it on a real person, it's you don't really get a do-over in
Scale.
some cases. So for sure, like, they have to produce, equipment that allows for that training aspect of it,
Yeah.
which, I mean, it's similar. My dad was a doctor. He went through medical school, and he would have told you that they would go through the same process but at a much more rudimentary level with
Back in
what
the
they
day.
had back in,
Yeah.
the olden days. So.
Yeah, yeah, okay. And so, I mean, for your own experience, I mean, what's your comfort, confidence, going under the robotic knife, so to speak?
So it's fairly confident. My mom actually has been operated on twice
Okay.
by, it's actually the Da Vinci surgical
Mhm.
robot. And in both cases, one time was to remove a kidney, and the second time was to remove part of a lung. And in both cases, she was home in a matter of a couple days.
Hmm.
Something that previously, if they had to do it with, call it the open surgery,
Mhm.
it would have definitely been a much more laborious process to
Yeah,
the recovery from it.
yeah,
So yeah, I have absolutely no issues with it. I've got
uh-huh,
100% confidence.
yeah, you've got firsthand experience.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So I've seen, she was literally home after the lung in particular. She was home in 2 days, and going up and downstairs and
mm,
things like that.
mm,
So it's for sure it shortens up the recovery times.
yeah,
It's really a much easier way to go through surgery rather than having to be
yeah,
opened up
yeah,
and
yeah,
worked on that way.
yeah. I mean, it's interesting because we recently did this, global survey of, global technology executives around their perceptions, comfort, confidence in, either working alongside robots or robotic applications, interacting with them within their workplace. And the medical space was the one area where there was we really saw a huge disconnect in terms of that level of trust and comfort and confidence. And maybe it's because they haven't had that firsthand experience, but I guess how do you think about building that trust, whether it's amongst the practitioners or patients, in terms of, listen, this is safe, it's certified, it's proven, it's tested, it's reliable, there's no latency. I mean, that's a big job, that patient education piece, I think, right?
Yeah, absolutely, and I think part of it is you have to still have a practitioner involved.
Yeah.
It can't be 100% robotic. There does have to be somebody actually controlling it, just in case, well, I mean, they should be controlling it anyway because
Mm.
they'll know what's best, but,
Yeah.
it's really just about having somebody that has that experience and that has that ability to really showcase that they have the skill set to work with
Mm.
patients and work with the robot, at the same time.
Yeah.
So from that standpoint, I think the disconnect is I think people get this, vision of the sci-fi surgery where you go into a pod and it just
Yeah.
does everything itself. That's really not. We're not to that point yet,
Mhm.
from a technology standpoint where I think anybody is comfortable with it. I don't think the
Mhm.
FDA would allow it. It still has very heavy involvement from a surgeon in terms of the planning, in
Yeah.
terms of the actual surgery itself, and then in terms of the recovery plan. So
Yeah.
it's really just like everything. It's about education and it's about showing people, via either, training, white papers, videos, whatever.
Mhm.
Look, this is a much easier process than what you think it is.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, you mentioned the FDA certification process, nothing gets done without them, like, let's say you're in an elevator with the head of the FDA, and I don't know if it's a him or a her or whatnot, but what sort of question would you have for them in order to advocate for the overall health of the sector? Are you happy with the current situation? Is there more that can be done to help manufacturers in terms of getting devices to market quicker, more efficiently? What's your sense? And
I think it really I think they've embraced the technology. I don't think
yeah,
that's been an issue, but
yeah,
for sure some of the roadblocks they throw up in terms of just the certification process,
mm,
it is very onerous. I mean, and for all the right reasons, but I know that, from talking to people, there's a lot of steps in there that
yeah,
it's a lot of documentation, a lot of paperwork, and it's still can be very manual. So it's also about not embracing necessarily the technology from the surgery side of it,
yeah,
but also embracing technology from the processing side of it to
uh-huh,
make it a little bit more automated on their end to help, so paperwork's not just sitting on somebody's desk. I
yeah.
think that that's really the biggest thing is, we've got to get to a point with, governmental efficiency, which I know is a loaded word these days.
Gun topic.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Elon. But we've got to get to the point where, there has to be this embrace at sort of a government level so that
Mm,
we're able to move more quickly and evolve as a
yeah.
as a society.
With these revolutionary technologies that really, I mean, to your point, can significantly improve,
Mhm.
actually in the operating theater and then that recovery time afterwards, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. So you mentioned sort of the fact that a lot of these ORs have become, computer science labs, if you will, right? And going away from the cloud to on-prem and whatnot. Talk about the importance of an RTOS and, what can go wrong if there was delay or latency or jitter or whatnot,
Yeah. Yeah, so with a real-time with an RTOS with a real-time OS, I think the biggest thing is just the ability to help monitor and keep things clean from a functional safety standpoint. So,
Mm,
as an example, I mean, the most basic example is somebody walking in with the proper equipment, PPE on.
mm,
You don't want somebody walking in who maybe hasn't properly scrubbed up. You don't want somebody walking in that, doesn't have a mask on, et cetera. So it starts with that, and then it just continues from there of, hey, look, it's again, you have to have that real time analysis going on, and that's what an RTOS is able to enable. And then from a latency standpoint, I mean, any sort of delay between what is actually happening and what the surgeon is seeing or whoever is seeing is, I mean, you're talking about literally life and death in some cases. If you think about a cardiac surgery or, spinal surgery, one little slip
yeah.
and, it's,
Yeah.
not good,
Yeah.
to put it mildly. So I think from a latency standpoint, like you cannot have really anything.
Hmm.
And I think that that's one of the most critical aspects of having real-time capabilities is just that ability to, see things as it's happening within the body. Because otherwise what'll happen is, you get a blip or something like that, and everything has to immediately come to a stop.
Hmm. Hmm.
So again, it comes down to the reliability. It comes down to the zero latency, and it comes down to just, ensuring that you've got the right tools as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
And I mean, it's interesting because even a real-time OS can do things as far as the analytics go of like, making sure that a surgeon didn't leave something in a patient that's not supposed to
Mm,
be there. So
really?
we've all heard the horror stories about it.
Yeah.
It does happen, and so I think that's a lot of what happens is really that functional safety aspect,
Mhm.
safety in general aspect. Patient safety is huge, and from a hospital standpoint, anything that you can do to really limit liability, I think,
Mhm.
from a business standpoint is good.
Yes, yes, for sure. Well, I mean, it really speaks to sort of the strength of our partnership when it comes to hardware and software and what we're hoping to deliver for the industry, right? So, I mean, great insights. So always our final question is, if you could give looking back over the course of your career, if you could give your younger self starting out in the industry one piece of advice, knowing what you know now, what would it be and why?
Ooh, that's a good question.
And you can keep it in relation to medical technology or broader, up to you.
Ah, so I honestly, I've only been in the industry a couple of years. I was in something completely different
Mm.
before this. I probably would have gotten into this industry a lot sooner, honestly, because I
Mental
love it.
growth, yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I think in general, it's just about being able to, really embrace and understand the technology and looking at it more. We always talk about what's on the spec sheet, but the reality of it is at the end of the day, it's realizing the impact that we have on
Mhm.
people. And I think
Yeah,
I've had a personal experience with the surgical robot, which we provide the boards for,
right.
with my mom, and it's sort of a good reminder for us that we all get entangled in the technical aspect of it and compatibilities and certifications and things like that.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, it's that old thing of you're not selling a drill, you're selling a hole. In
Mhm.
this case, we're not selling at a high level a surgical robot. We're selling a cure
Yeah.
to some
Yeah.
degree. So
Yeah.
I think that's really the biggest thing is just understanding the real world impact you have versus
Mhm.
just the nuts and bolts and the business impact.
Definitely. No, a great industry a part of. I mean, you obviously making differences, right, with
Mhm.
technology and whatnot. So fantastic insights. Really enjoyed speaking with you, Jason. We'll do it again.
Same.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank
Cool.
you.